Welcome to the channel, guys. Today we're going to be talking about my top 10 winter fragrances from the niche category. So stay tuned for that. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. I really do appreciate it. Now, when I was making this list, I actually thought about it quite a bit, and I set up kind of two things that I wanted to make sure to do. One, I left out a lot of the usual suspects. So of course, Black Phantom, I love this fragrance. Everyone's probably heard about this fragrance. It's amazing. Same with Oajan. These are two of my favorite fragrances, and they're the best in the winter. But since I talk about them a lot, since they've been on a lot of my lists, and since I'm sure they're on a lot of other people's lists, I've decided to leave them out. The other thing I've decided to do is that if there's two fragrances I really like from a house, I'm putting them at the same spot, at a tie. I didn't want to have too many of these fragrances dominated by one house. So it is actually a little bit more than 10 fragrances. But without further ado, let's get into the list. So the number 10 spot is Serge. Now I have a nice sample of this. I got a little sample set of Serge Lutens, and I'm happy to be trying these ones out. I'm going to be doing full reviews on all of these, but this is a nice, sweet tobacco fragrance. I was actually really surprised the first time I put this on skin. At least in the initial stages, this fragrance is very heavy tobacco, which is what a lot of people have said it's not. So a lot of people have described it as sweet and honey. I certainly don't get that on my skin in the initial burst. It takes a little while for the sweetness, for the honey and all of that to really build into the fragrance. It starts off as a very nice dry tobacco fragrance, and I actually do really enjoy it. So that is my number 10 spot. My number 9 spot goes to Serra's Red Tobacco. Just got this sample in a little while ago, and I have tried it out a few times. I really enjoy it, and this is definitely one from Serra that I am looking to get a full bottle of. This is a really beautiful boozy tobacco fragrance with leather. Now I get a lot of booziness right off in the opening. It does have that tobacco and a somewhat subtle leather flavor. The dry down in this one for me is where it becomes a lot more leathery, and it is actually a very enjoyable fragrance. I was very surprised by this one, and I definitely enjoy it a lot. Also has exceptional performance. That's something you really want to look for in the winter, and this one does really well. Very heavy projection, good sillage, great longevity, and honestly I think with Serra you do get a lot of value for what you're paying for. So that is the number 9 spot. If you are a niche fan and you do like winter fragrances, you know I had to include something from Homme, but I wanted to think about something a little bit different and something that's not talked about as much by Homme. Of course, I am going to be wearing the fabled Blue Beast. I do love that one, and it has a really great incense note that I have come to really appreciate. But I actually recently sampled the Library Collection, and this one is not really talked about a lot these days about Homme, and I have decided to pick Opus 6. So this is a really beautiful incense, spicy fragrance that also has amber, and I actually really enjoy the combination of the pepper and the incense. It really has this nice, spicy, smoky vibe. It's very enjoyable. Now it is one that I think is unique, and I think it's a little more challenging as far as Homme fragrances go, but it is really enjoyable. So I think in the future, if I do end up picking up an Homme, probably is going to be one of these ones, just because I like something a little bit different. Not that I don't like, Interlude Man and Beach Hut Man and a lot of the other great options they have available, but those are also ones that I feel are widely talked about, and everybody, at least in Fragcom, knows about them. So if you haven't looked into the Library Collection, I definitely recommend you do. You can get these sample sets at a pretty reasonable price. So the number 8 fragrance is a Tom Ford, and it is Noir de Noir. I think this is actually one of my favorite from the private blend, and I guess interestingly enough, this wasn't one that I liked a lot when I first tried it out. This one is rose, but it's very dark and very, people often describe it as a jammy rose. I think it's a very dark fragrance, and in fact, it is oftentimes difficult to even recognize that this fragrance is based on rose. So it has this very dark, mysterious, resinous quality that I really enjoy, and actually, one of these days I am going to end up picking up full bottle of this, probably a 50 ml, but you never know, I might go for the flacon. But this is a really, really enjoyable fragrance. It's dark, it's mysterious, it's a little bit daring as well, and it's one of the things that I think Tom Ford is good at doing, is making daring fragrances. So a lot of his best options are these fragrances that at least come off a little more challenging. Now, this is one that I think is, even though a little daring, fairly easy to pull off. So this is something a lot of people can wear. It's also very classy and sophisticated fragrance. So I do enjoy this one a lot. Definitely more suited for the colder weather. That is my number 7 spot. So for the number 6 spot, we have a leather fragrance. It's a sweet leather fragrance called Saddle by Svensk Parfum. Now, this is actually an interesting one because when I first heard about this one, I really got the impression that I was going to be kicked in the face with leather. And at least on my skin, that is most certainly not the case. The butterscotch in this is the strongest player. So this is a very sweet fragrance. It almost comes off gourmandy because that butterscotch is quite strong. Now, there is certainly a leather note in there, and it is a very refined, polished leather, much like a leather saddle, which is exactly the goal that they were going for. But this is really nice in the sense that it does go into that sweet leather territory without being too similar to something like Tuscan leather, which has the raspberry and the leather combo, which is done a lot, and a lot of fragrances have done that. And there are a lot of good fragrances that do that. But this one is nice because it's also unique. I haven't seen anything with butterscotch and leather, and in fact, I can't think off the top of my head of a butterscotch fragrance to begin with. So I do appreciate the uniqueness. This one is also a beast performer, so it's definitely going to last you a long time. This is a 30 ml bottle, but honestly, you only really need 2 sprays or so when you wear this, and it lasts, it projects, it will hold up very well in the cold weather. So if you're looking for something that's a little bit different, not a lot of people have this one because it is a Swedish brand, I believe, and so it is a little bit unique, and it is definitely unique as a leather fragrance as well. Anyways, if you do like your leather fragrances and you like sweet leather, this is definitely one I recommend you check out. So we're into the top 5, and I am gonna start off the top 5 with one that is definitely on my next to-buy list for fragrances. I love gourmands. I actually had to restrict myself to only having a couple of gourmands on this list because otherwise I would probably have 5 or 6 of them, because winter really is the time that they shine. And this, I'm putting Rose All Day. This is such a beautiful fragrance, and this is really the apple pie king. So a lot of people talk about Oajan, which I also really love, as an apple pie fragrance. And to me, it's more of a cinnamon honey bomb that sometimes has a bit of a fruity vibe to it. This one actually has a note of apple pie, and it's a very rich, very sumptuous apple pie. This is overall a very delicious fragrance. So it's absolutely going to smell like a freshly baked apple pie. Very high quality, very enjoyable, very rich and sensual fragrance. So I do appreciate that, and that is my number 5. Number 4, I'm going with a excellent coffee-based fragrance, and in fact, it is the best coffee-based fragrance that I've actually ever got my nose on, and that is Follow by Kerosene. This is so good. If you want something that smells like coffee, authentic coffee, this is really it. I mean, it smells like really beautiful, fresh brewing black coffee, and as it dries down, there is definitely this sweetness that comes into play. You get a little bit more of this mocha vibe, but this is a coffee fragrance through and through. And the one thing I really appreciate about it is every other time I've really sampled a coffee fragrance, that coffee note is fairly fleeting. You might have it in the opening, you might have it for a few hours, but this one is coffee from the moment you spray it to the moment that it's gone. And I really love that about this. And it is really enjoyable to smell. And it really, I mean, some people have described this as smelling better than Starbucks, which I definitely agree. I'm not a Starbucks fan, but this is absolutely delicious fragrance. And if you love the smell of coffee, like I do, even though I'm not a coffee drinker, this is definitely a win. We are at the top 3, the best of the best, and it is definitely very hard to pick these out. And with number 3, I'm opening with Fan Your Flames by Nishane. This one really surprised me. It is just such an interesting combination of notes, and I never would have thought to myself to put tobacco and coconut together, but it works really well. And this one is absolutely gorgeous. It's very long lasting. It comes off as a very, very boozy tobacco fragrance with some added sweetness. Now, this is not one that I especially do get a lot of a coconut smell. Rather, I get sweetness with this one. But I definitely get a very strong booziness, a very strong tobacco note. And there is even, in some sense, a bit of a embery, almost burning type of smell that I get. Maybe like actual burning tobacco. Works really well. This is gorgeous, and it is an absolute beast. I went out the other day with this one and I wore 3 sprays, and I have to say 3 sprays was probably pushing it because this is really, really loud. I mean, I actually heard someone make a comment about it from at least 6 feet away. So people could smell this cloud for a good distance, and it lasts a really, really long time. And actually, the last time I wore it, I did get a couple compliments on this one. So it's a gorgeous fragrance, and it's one a lot of people appreciate. It's one that I love quite a bit. So I am looking forward to trying out more from the House of Nishane, but that is going to be my number 3. Now in my next spot, number 2, I actually have a tie, and that is for Rosa Parfums, and the tie is between Creation E or Enigma Parfum Cologne, the new release, and Fetish. I have the EDP concentration, which to my knowledge has recently been discontinued. I am really, really hoping that they do a Parfum Cologne version of this as well, because otherwise it leaves only the Parfum concentration left, and I'm sure it's fantastic, but it is nice to have a few options. So I'm going to talk about them both a little bit separately, but they are tied for second place. Now, this one is a beautiful, beautiful new release, and I think it's one of the best masculine tobacco fragrances that you can possibly get, to be honest with you. I mean, it really has this beautiful tobacco note, and that is certainly what is the strongest on my skin, is this nice dry tobacco. It opens with this really great Coca-Cola vibe, and honestly, I love anything that smells like Coca-Cola. I love Coca-Cola. So that opening is gorgeous, and then it has this beautiful tobacco, and as time progresses, the vanilla mixes in there, it gets sweeter, and it gets really nice into this weird kind of, I mean, it's not weird, but it's weird how the notes smell kind of like cocoa to me in the dry down, especially in the deep dry down. I kind of get a chocolatey vibe, but there isn't anything listed on here that would give off that impression, at least to my knowledge. So it is a little strange how those notes do play off that way, but very nice. If you like tobacco fragrances and you want one that's decidedly masculine, I think this is definitely the one. It does project and perform quite well. Personally, for example, I have a lot of problems with Elysium. It just does not do well on my skin. But this one does perform well. I definitely get around 8 hours, sometimes over that, and it has good projection as well. So very nice, and considering you get 100 milliliters, I think it is worth the price. Now that one is tied with Fetish. I haven't talked about this pickup yet. I haven't said a lot about it. I did actually buy it quite some time ago, but this is gorgeous. I'm going to do a full review on it, hopefully soon. This is one that, while Creation E, I figure or feel, is a very versatile fragrance, you can definitely dress it up or down. This is one that I would have a very hard time wearing in a casual setting. I could spray this on and just chill out or whatever, but it is such a rich and opulent smelling fragrance. This smells like money, and it does cost a lot of money, but it literally smells like money. It has this beautiful, spicy, animalic, little bit leathery opening that is honestly completely amazing. I love the opening on this fragrance. It's one of the best in the game. The dry down is also nice. I know some people said it has a bit of an old manish vibe. I definitely can see how you might get that vibe in the dry down. It's definitely a little bit more mature. I wouldn't say it's necessarily an old man fragrance, but it is definitely a more mature fragrance. And I think the reason why this wasn't the only Rosa on the list is because I find it less versatile. This is one I'm going to be wearing in special occasions. I have a friend, and he's hopefully going to be finishing his dissertation very soon, and when we celebrate, I'm going to be wearing this for sure. Anyways, guys, that is my number 2 spot, Creation E and Fetish by Rosa Parfums. My number 1 spot is going to be what many call the king of gourmand fragrances, and it could well be, and that is Italica by Serge. This is one of those fragrances that's absolutely gorgeous. It has actually a very nice felt bottle, or a bottle that is covered in felt. It is a nice presentation, and it is this beautiful, creamy almond biscuit fragrance. It's one of the most sensual gourmand fragrances that I've ever got my nose on. So I do actually really like that about it. This is one that after the first time I smelled it, I knew I had to get the bottle in my collection because it is just so gorgeous and it is quite unique. I don't feel like there's a lot of other gourmand fragrances that really have the type of vibe that this one has. So I do enjoy it a lot. This one is also one that lasts an incredibly long time, 10 hours easily, and it has absolutely amazing sillage. So this one creates a magnificent scent bubble, constant whiffs of this one throughout the day. This is just one that doesn't quit. It performs very, very well. It's not extremely beast mode in the sense that the projection, I don't get very, very long distance projection. It's a much tighter scent cloud, but that scent cloud is extremely thick. And anyone who comes into that range, including whoever's wearing it, is gonna smell it. So it is a gorgeous fragrance and it projects and performs really, really well. So the quality on this one, top notch. I also think it's a fairly unique one as far as gourmands go because it does come off as this really sensual, amazing almond biscuit. Anyways, guys, that is my top 10 list for the niche side of things this winter. Leave a comment down below. What are you looking forward to wearing? And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.